3 months ago, I watched my parents swing a baseball bat through a complete stranger's living room, thinking they were destroying my life. Turns out, they were handing me the greatest gift I never knew I needed: freedom from the people who were supposed to love me most. I'm Vivian, and I need to tell you about the day I discovered that sometimes the most toxic people in your life share your DNA. It all started with $120,000 and a family dinner that would change everything forever. But to understand why that money almost destroyed my life, I need to take you back 5 years, to when I still believed that blood meant loyalty and love was supposed to be unconditional. I was 28 then, living in a studio apartment that was basically a glorified closet. Every single day for 4 years, I'd wake up in that cramped space and remind myself why I was doing this. Why I was eating canned beans for dinner. Why I was taking the bus instead of owning a car. Why I was buying clothes from thrift stores and celebrating birthdays with gas station cupcakes. $120,000. That's what freedom looked like to me: enough money to buy a house, to finally have a space that was truly mine. Every dollar represented a choice, a sacrifice, a dream deferred but not abandoned. Late nights debugging code until my eyes burned. Weekend freelance projects while my friends were out living their lives. It was all worth it because I had found her, the perfect 3-bedroom craftsman with hardwood floors and a kitchen that caught the morning light like liquid gold. Every Saturday, I'd drive to my parents' house for our weekly family tradition. Mom would make her famous meatloaf, Dad would complain about his back while secretly loving having both his daughters around the table, and Melissa, my older sister by 3 years, would show up with Andrew, her husband who always seemed to be chasing the next get-rich-quick scheme that would make him wealthy without actually working. That particular Saturday in October felt different from the moment I walked in. There was this electricity in the air, this sense that something big was about to happen. Melissa and Andrew were whispering in the corner like conspirators. Mom kept shooting me these strange looks, part excitement, part calculation. Dad couldn't quite meet my eyes during his usual complaints about the neighbor's dog. I was too caught up in my own excitement to pay attention to the warning signs. I had pictures of the house on my phone, ready to share my joy with the people who were supposed to celebrate my success. "Melissa has some wonderful news," Mom announced as we settled around the dining room table, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she was about to ask for a favor. What happened next still makes my stomach drop when I think about it. Melissa didn't just tell us about her new business venture, she gave us a full presentation. Printed charts, graphs, projected revenue streams, market analysis. This was her 3rd attempt at entrepreneurship, and apparently, she'd learned nothing from the first 2 spectacular failures that had forced my parents to remortgage their house to pay off her debts. "I've learned from my mistakes," she said, her eyes bright with that dangerous combination of desperation and delusion that I'd seen too many times before. "This time, I have everything figured out. I just need capital for initial development and marketing." Andrew nodded beside her like the perfect supportive husband, playing his role to perfection. "The projections show we could double our investment within 2 years. That's when they all turned to look at me. Not casual glances, deliberate, expectant stares that made something cold settle in my chest. "Why are you all looking at me like that?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. Melissa's voice took on that sweet, manipulative tone she'd been perfecting since we were kids. "Well, I know you're saving for a house, and Mom mentioned you have about $120,000 saved up." The room went silent except for the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. They had discussed my finances. They had calculated exactly how much I was worth to them. I wasn't their daughter, their sister, I was a walking ATM with a convenient family connection. "I'm not investing my house money in your business, Melissa." The words came out sharper than I intended, but honestly, I was shocked by the audacity. This wasn't a small favor between siblings. This was my entire future they were asking me to gamble on Melissa's track record of spectacular business failures. Melissa's face crumpled like I'd physically struck her. "But if you help me now, in 2 years I'll give you back $240,000. You could buy an even better house then." I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all. The woman who'd failed at business twice asking me to trust her with my life savings based on nothing but optimism and pie-in-the-sky projections. "Melissa, you've already failed at business twice." Maybe it's time to stop with these schemes and get a regular job like the rest of us. That's when everything exploded. Melissa burst into tears and ran from the room like we were still teenagers having a dramatic fight. Andrew called me heartless and followed her. And my parents, the people who had raised me, who had supposedly loved me unconditionally for 28 years, immediately turned on me like I was the villain in this story. How could you be so cruel to your sister? Mom's voice was ice cold, cutting through me like a blade. Melissa is more talented than you'll ever be. You're just jealous of her success. Success? I wanted to scream. What success? The 2 bankruptcies? The creditors calling their house at all hours? The stress that had given Dad panic attacks and sent him to the emergency room? But Dad delivered the killing blow. You give Melissa that money, or you're no longer part of this family. I stared at these people, these strangers wearing my parents' faces, and realized that to them, I had never been a daughter. I was a bank account with a heartbeat, a resource to be tapped when needed. I'm not giving her my money, I said quietly. Then get out of our house and don't come back. So I did. I walked out of that house, drove home to my cramped apartment, and changed my phone number the next day. If they wanted to cut me out of the family over money, I'd make it official. 1 year later, I bought that house. The same beautiful craftsman with hardwood floors and morning sunlight streaming through the kitchen windows. I set up my home office in the spare bedroom and discovered what peace actually felt like. No more Saturday dinners walking on eggshells. No more listening to Melissa's latest delusional business plans. No more being treated like a human ATM by the people who were supposed to love me. Through mutual friends, I heard that Melissa's business was actually successful this time. She bought a big house, was traveling constantly with Andrew, posting pictures of their lavish lifestyle all over social media. I was genuinely happy for her, but I felt zero regret about protecting my financial future. For 5 years, I lived without them. 5 peaceful, drama-free years where I advanced in my career, learned to enjoy my own company, and slowly built a life that felt authentically mine. I even met someone, Sebastian, this incredible man I connected with through a professional networking group. He lived in another state, but we made the long-distance relationship work because he was everything my family had never been: kind, stable, supportive, someone who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. Sebastian would visit me, I'd visit him, and we started talking seriously about a future together. I was actually considering selling my house to move to his state and start fresh somewhere new with someone who genuinely cared about my happiness. Then, on a Tuesday morning that started like any other, I got an email that changed everything. It came to my old email address, the one I barely checked anymore. The sender's name made my stomach drop: Mom. Vivian, we need to see you urgently. This is a matter of life and death. Please come home. Despite everything, these people had raised me. If someone was dying, if Dad was having a heart attack or Mom had cancer, I needed to know. So I wrote back, short and direct, I'll come by this Saturday. Saturday morning, I sat in my car outside their house for 10 minutes, trying to gather courage. The neighborhood looked smaller than I remembered, shabbier somehow. But what really caught my attention were the 2 cars in the driveway, Melissa's brand new Porsche and Andrew's pristine Mercedes, both expensive as hell. So this wasn't just about my parents. This was a family intervention. Mom opened the door looking older, more tired, with new lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. Vivian, she said, her voice shaky with emotion. Thank you for coming. The whole family was assembled in the living room like some twisted reunion special. Dad in his usual chair looking grim, Melissa on the couch next to Andrew, her eyes red from crying. They all looked genuinely happy to see me, but also terrified. What's going on? I asked, staying standing because I didn't want to get comfortable. Your email said this was life and death. Mom immediately started tearing up. It's about Melissa. She's in serious trouble. I looked at my sister, who couldn't even meet my eyes. Andrew was holding her hand like she might float away if he let go. What kind of trouble? Dad cleared his throat. Her business went under 3 months ago. The bank took her house. She owes money to some very dangerous people. I felt that familiar mixture of vindication and genuine sadness. Vindication because I'd been right about her business prospects all along. Sadness because losing your home genuinely sucks, even when it's the predictable result of your own terrible decisions. I'm sorry to hear that, I said carefully. But what does this have to do with me? Melissa finally spoke up, her voice barely a whisper. $150,000. Who do you owe $150,000 to? Andrew answered, private investors. They're not the kind of people who accept "I'll pay you later" as an answer. Melissa started crying again. They've been calling, making threats. They know where we're staying now. They know our routines. We're scared, Vivian. Really scared. I felt bad for them, I really did. But I still didn't understand why I was sitting in this living room. That's terrible, but I still don't see what you want from me. Mom dropped the bomb. We know you bought a house. A nice one. We think you should sell it and help Melissa pay off these debts. I stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Are you out of your goddamn mind? You're young, Mom continued, as if I hadn't spoken. You can earn another house. Melissa and Andrew could be seriously hurt if they don't pay this money back. I looked around the room at all of them, these people who had abandoned me for 5 years, who had told me I wasn't family anymore, who had never once called to check if I was alive or dead. So let me get this straight, I said slowly, my voice getting colder with each word. You kicked me out of the family 5 years ago because I wouldn't give Melissa money for her business. Now that business has failed spectacularly, she's in debt to dangerous people, and you want me to sell my house to bail her out? Family helps family, Dad said with a straight face. Family? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You told me I wasn't family anymore. Remember? You cut me off completely. Melissa was sobbing harder now. I know we messed up before, but this is different. These people aren't going to just take us to court. They're going to hurt us. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you borrowed money from loan sharks. Andrew got angry. You have no idea what kind of pressure we're under. You're right, I don't. But I noticed 2 very expensive cars in the driveway. Maybe start by selling those and paying off some of the debt. We need those cars for work, Melissa snapped. You need them more than you need to be safe from dangerous creditors? The circular logic was making my head spin. They were asking me to destroy my financial security to fix problems they had created, while refusing to make any sacrifices themselves. Mom got right in my face. This house you bought, if you sold it, you could pay off Melissa's debts and still have money left over for a nice apartment. A nice apartment? I was getting really angry now. Mom, I worked my ass off for that house. I saved every penny for years. I lived like a monk so I could afford it. I'm not selling it to fix Melissa's mess. She's your sister, Dad said. She's also a grown woman who made her own choices. Bad choices, apparently. Melissa jumped up from the couch. You're supposed to help me. You're supposed to care about what happens to me. Where was this family loyalty 5 years ago when you all told me to get lost? That was different, Mom said. How was it different? You didn't want to help me keep my money then, and I don't want to help you with your money problems now. The room went quiet. Everyone was staring at me like I was the unreasonable one, like I was the villain in their twisted family drama. I'm not doing this, I said finally. Melissa got herself into this mess, and she can get herself out. If you want to help her so badly, sell your house and give her the money. Mom gasped like I'd slapped her. This is the only house we have. We're old, Vivian. We can't just start over like you can. Then I guess you understand exactly how I feel about my house. I started walking toward the door. Melissa called after me, you're making a huge mistake. These people don't mess around. I turned back to look at her. Neither do I. I left them all sitting there and drove home feeling lighter than I had in years. As soon as I got back to my house, I blocked Mom's email address. I was done with their drama forever. For about a week, things were peaceful. Sebastian called every day, supportive and understanding as always. You did the right thing, he kept saying. They can't just show up after 5 years and demand you fix their problems. I was actually feeling pretty good about my decision. Sure, I felt bad that Melissa was in trouble, but that wasn't my fault or my responsibility. I had my own life to worry about. Then Tuesday morning happened, and everything changed in ways I never could have predicted. I was in my kitchen making coffee, looking forward to a productive workday, when I heard a car door slam outside. I looked out the window and nearly dropped my mug. Mom and Dad were walking up my driveway like they owned the place. "What are you doing here?" I asked when I opened the door. "How did you even get my address?" Mom looked proud of herself. "Melissa hired a private investigator." "A private investigator? Are you serious right now?" Dad was looking around at my house with calculating eyes, and I could practically see the dollar signs spinning in his head. "This is a nice place," he said. "Get off my property." But Mom pushed past me and walked right into my house like she had every right to be there. Dad followed her. I was so shocked by their audacity that I just stood there for a second. "Don't make yourselves comfortable," I said. "You're not staying." Mom was walking around my living room, touching things, examining everything like she was conducting a real estate appraisal. "If you sold this house, you could easily pay off Melissa's debt and still have plenty left over for a smaller place. Maybe a nice apartment. I already told you I'm not selling my house." "But look at all the space," Dad said, spreading his arms out. "It's just you living here. You don't need all this room. What I need is none of your business." Mom turned to me with tears in her eyes again. "Melissa is really scared, Vivian. These men called her yesterday. They know where she and Andrew are staying now. They said if they don't get their money by the end of the month, something bad is going to happen. Then maybe Melissa should go to the police." "The police can't help with this," Dad said. "These aren't the kind of people who care about restraining orders." I was getting more frustrated by the second. "That's still not my problem. You both need to leave now." "We're not leaving until you agree to help your sister," Mom said, crossing her arms like a stubborn child. "Then I'm calling the police." I pulled out my phone and started dialing. Dad grabbed my arm. "Don't be ridiculous. Let go of me." I shook him off. "I'm calling them right now if you don't get out of my house." They could tell I was serious. Mom started crying harder. "Fine, but this isn't over, Vivian. If something happens to Melissa, it's on your head. And if something happens to my financial security because I bail out her bad decisions, that would be on my head too. At least this way, only the person who made the mess deals with the consequences." Dad pointed his finger at me. "You're going to regret this. Family is supposed to stick together. You didn't think that 5 years ago." After they finally left, I called the realtor I'd been talking to about maybe selling my house to move in with Sebastian. "Hey, it's Vivian. Remember we talked about putting my house on the market? I need to sell it as fast as possible. I'm willing to take a 5% discount if that helps move things along." "Well, that's interesting timing. I actually have a buyer who's been looking in your area. With that kind of discount, I think he'd be very interested." 3 days later, he called me back with an offer. It was lower than I'd hoped, but fair considering the quick sale. I accepted immediately. Sebastian was confused when I told him. "Why the rush?" I explained about my parents showing up at my house uninvited, their threats, their refusal to leave when asked. "I don't trust them, Sebastian. I think they're going to keep harassing me, maybe even do something crazy. I'd rather sell the house and get the money somewhere safe where they can't see it or use it as leverage against me." "That's probably smart. And hey, this means you can come stay with me sooner than we planned." That made me smile for the first time in days. "Are you okay with me staying at your place while I look for a new house in your area?" "Are you kidding? I've been hoping you'd move here. This just speeds up our timeline." The closing happened fast. Within a week, all the paperwork was done and the house was officially sold. Sebastian drove out to help me pack everything up and move it to his place. It felt good to have him there, to not be dealing with this stress alone. As we were loading the last of my boxes into the moving truck, I looked back at the house one more time. I'd been genuinely happy there. I'd worked incredibly hard to afford it. But I felt good about my decision to sell. I was starting a new chapter with Sebastian, and my family couldn't use my house as emotional blackmail anymore. "You okay?" Sebastian asked, putting his arm around me. "Yeah, I'm good. Let's get out of here." We drove off together, and I felt this huge weight lift off my shoulders. Whatever happened with Melissa and her debt problems, it wasn't going to involve me or my money. I was finally free of their drama for good. Living with Sebastian turned out to be incredible. His place was comfortable and welcoming, and working remotely meant I could settle into a routine pretty quickly. We spent our evenings looking at houses online, planning our future together. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely happy and completely stress-free. I'd been living with Sebastian for about a month when my phone rang one Tuesday morning. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but it had my old hometown area code. "Is this Vivian Smith?" "Yes." "Who's calling?" "This is Officer Hughes with the Lincoln Police Department. I'm calling about an incident involving your parents, Wade and Susan Smith." My blood went cold. What kind of incident? They were arrested last night for breaking and entering and destruction of property. The homeowner wants to press charges. I was completely confused. Breaking and entering where? The address they broke into is listed as your former residence. Is 847 Maple Street a house you used to own? I sold that house a month ago. What were my parents doing there? That's what we're trying to figure out. They caused significant damage to the interior of the home. Destroyed furniture, broke windows, spray-painted obscenities on the walls. The new owner came home to find them in his living room, smashing his coffee table with a baseball bat. I sat down hard on Sebastian's couch, my legs suddenly unable to support me. "Are you serious?" "Very serious. The damage is estimated at around $40,000. Your parents claimed they thought it was still your house and that you'd wronged them somehow. They said they were getting back at you for abandoning your family." I told Officer Hughes everything, about Melissa's debts, about them showing up at my house uninvited, about the whole 5-year family drama that had led to this moment. He listened patiently and took detailed notes. "So they didn't know you'd sold the house?" "Obviously not. They probably went there to vandalize my property as revenge for not giving Melissa money. Instead, they destroyed some innocent person's home." "That's exactly what it looks like. The problem is, they destroyed someone else's property instead of yours." After I hung up, I told Sebastian what had happened. He was as shocked as I was. "That's insane, Vivian. They could have been shot. What if the homeowner had been armed and thought they were dangerous intruders?" I hadn't even thought of that. My parents could have been killed over this stupid vendetta, this pathetic attempt at revenge. Over the next few weeks, I got regular updates from the police and from mutual friends back home about what was happening with my parents' case. The legal proceedings were moving forward, and the reality of their situation was becoming clear. Mom and Dad were facing serious criminal charges, but their lawyer managed to work out a plea deal. They admitted guilt in exchange for avoiding jail time, but they had to pay full restitution to the homeowner they'd terrorized. $40,000 for property damage, plus legal fees, plus court costs. It ended up being close to $60,000 total. My friend Catherine called me with the complete story a few weeks later. "Vivian, your parents had to sell their house. They couldn't afford the restitution any other way." The irony was absolutely staggering. They had sold the house they claimed was their only asset, the one they said they were too old to replace. "And here's the kicker," Catherine continued. "After paying everything they owed to the court and the homeowner, they gave the remaining money to Melissa for her debt problems. So they had ended up doing exactly what they demanded I do, but with their own house instead of mine." "That's not even the best part," Catherine said. "Melissa's creditor problems? Turns out they weren't as scary as she made them sound. The dangerous people were just a legitimate investment firm that was threatening to sue her. No broken kneecaps, no mysterious accidents, just regular legal action. So Melissa had lied about being in physical danger. She had manipulated everyone, including our parents, into thinking her life was at risk when really she was just facing a completely normal lawsuit." "Where are Mom and Dad living now?" I asked. They're renting a small apartment with Melissa and Andrew. All four of them crammed into a 2-bedroom place. From what I hear, it's not going well. Lots of fighting, lots of tension. A few months passed, and I heard through the grapevine that my family was trying to contact me through mutual friends. They wanted to apologize, to explain themselves, to somehow rebuild our relationship. Every time someone brought it up, I said no. Catherine called me one more time about it. Your mom asked me to tell you she's sorry. She said they realized they handled everything wrong, that they made terrible mistakes. It's too late for sorry, I told her. They spent 5 years not caring whether I was alive or dead. Then they demanded I bankrupt myself for Melissa's mistakes. Then they committed actual crimes because I wouldn't do what they wanted. I'm done. But their family, Vivian. No, they're not. Family doesn't abandon you for 5 years and then show up demanding money. Family doesn't hire private investigators to stalk you. Family doesn't break into houses with baseball bats because they don't get their way. Sebastian had been listening to my side of the conversation. When I hung up, he took my hand and squeezed it gently. You okay? I'm perfect, actually. And I was. We'd found a house we both loved and were preparing to make an offer. I was doing incredibly well at work and had even gotten a significant promotion. Most importantly, I didn't have to deal with their endless drama anymore. He smiled at me with that look that still made my heart skip. Speaking of the house we love, I was thinking about making an offer that's bigger than just on the house. He got down on one knee right there in his living room and pulled out a ring box that took my breath away. Vivian, will you marry me? We can buy that house together and start our real life, the one we've been dreaming about. I started crying happy tears for the first time in what felt like forever. Yes, absolutely yes. We got engaged that day and put an offer on the house that weekend. Our offer was accepted immediately, and we're planning to get married next year in the backyard of our new home. Sometimes I think about my family and wonder if I made the right choice cutting them off completely. Those moments of doubt usually last about 30 seconds, and then I remember how peaceful my life has been without their constant manipulation and emotional terrorism. Melissa created her own problems through a series of terrible business decisions and an inability to learn from her mistakes. Mom and Dad chose to enable her destructive behavior instead of letting her face the natural consequences of her actions. They all chose to harass and threaten me instead of dealing with their own issues like adults. And when I refused to be manipulated, they chose to commit actual crimes. I chose to build a life with someone who loves and supports me unconditionally. I chose to protect my financial security and my mental health. I chose to surround myself with people who don't try to manipulate me or treat me like a walking ATM. I think I chose much, much better. Sebastian and I are deep into planning our wedding, talking about maybe having kids someday, dreaming about the garden we want to plant next spring. My career is thriving in ways I never imagined, and I wake up every single day feeling genuinely happy and at peace. Really, truly content with the life I've built. And none of that would have been possible if I'd let my family drag me back into their mess, if I'd sacrificed my future for their dysfunction. So no, I don't regret cutting them off. Not for a single second. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally are actually the ones who place the most impossible conditions on that love. And sometimes walking away from toxic family members is the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for your future. The hardest boundaries we set are often the ones that finally set us free. And freedom, I've learned, is worth every sacrifice it takes to achieve it. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, share it with others who might need to hear it, and don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about choosing yourself when nobody else will. Sometimes the family you create is so much better than the one you were born into.
Turns out being told to leave your own company is a lot like finding out your husband's been practicing his partnership skills in ways that don't involve spreadsheets. There I was, standing in my conference room, the one with the custom walnut table I'd personally haggled for at that estate sale in Clarksville, while this bottle-blonde nightmare named Petra Vaughn screamed at me to exit the premises before security escorts you out. Security. In the company I built from scratch in my garage, while this woman's biggest achievement was color-coding her planner, and apparently my husband. Let me back up exactly 3 hours. Saturday morning, October 12th, our quarterly all-hands meeting. 15 employees crammed into the conference room of Flynn Creative. My agency, founded 8 years ago when I was hustling freelance gigs between teaching myself Adobe Creative Suite and surviving on Costco coffee. The same agency that Graham Tate, my husband of 12 years, joined 5 years ago when his tech startup belly flopped, and he needed somewhere to land that wasn't his mother's spare bedroom. I'm Astrid Flynn, 38, CEO, founder, the woman who turned a garage operation into a $4 million boutique branding agency in Austin's competitive market. I should mention that I own 75% of this company. Graham owns 25%. A generous gift when he joined, considering his primary contribution was moral support and occasionally remembering to lock the office door. The meeting started normal enough. I was presenting our Q3 results, 18% growth, 3 new clients including that organic brewery everyone wanted, when Petra stood up like she was about to accept an Oscar she didn't earn. Actually, Astrid, we need to discuss the company's new direction. We. Interesting word choice from someone who'd been an intern 14 months ago, whose primary skills included aggressive Instagram stories and apparently seducing married men during late-night strategy sessions. The new direction, I repeated, setting down my clicker. Of my company. Our company, Graham corrected, not meeting my eyes. Petra's been made a strategic partner. 40% equity. The room went silent. That specific silence that happens right before a massive train wreck, when everyone knows something catastrophic is about to happen, but nobody can look away. I smiled. Not a friendly smile. The smile a shark makes right before it reminds you who actually runs these waters. 40%, I said slowly. That's fascinating math, Graham, because last time I checked, you only own 25%. So unless you've invented new numbers, you literally cannot give away equity you don't possess. Petra's perfectly microbladed eyebrows drew together, the first sign she maybe hadn't thought this through. But she recovered quickly, flipping her hair like she was in a shampoo commercial and not actively committing corporate fraud. The paperwork's been filed, she announced, pulling out a folder like she was presenting evidence at trial. Full partnership, 40% ownership. My lawyer verified everything. Your lawyer? I almost laughed. The one you can afford on an intern's salary? Or did Graham foot that bill too? Let me guess. Company card? Her face flushed. Bingo. This is exactly why we need new leadership, Petra continued, her voice rising. You're stuck in the past, Astrid. Resistant to change. The company needs fresh vision, someone who understands modern marketing. Someone who plagiarized 3 client presentations from Pinterest and thought I wouldn't notice? I interrupted. Or someone whose idea of modern marketing is posting thirst traps and calling it brand awareness? Graham stood up then, playing the peacekeeper role he'd perfected over 12 years of being professionally mediocre. Astrid, let's be professional. Professional. I laughed. The kind of laugh that has sharp edges. Like forging my signature on legal documents? That kind of professional? The room temperature dropped about 40 degrees. Graham went pale. Petra's confidence flickered like a cheap fluorescent bulb. I don't know what you're talking about, Graham said, but his voice shook. Really? Because I spent yesterday with forensic accountants. I pulled out my own folder, significantly thicker than Petra's. $380,000. That's how much you two have embezzled over the past year. Fancy dinners at Uchi, those weekend trips to Cabo, Petra's Audi, which, by the way, is technically stolen company property. Petra's face went from flushed to ghost white in record time. You're bluffing, she spat, but I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. The slow, horrifying realization that maybe, just maybe, she'd bet everything on the wrong horse. Am I? I opened the folder, spread documents across the table. Bank statements, credit card receipts. A particularly damning expense report for a client dinner that was actually a couples massage at Lake Austin Spa Resort. Here's my favorite. You expensed a Tiffany bracelet as client appreciation. Except the client was you, Petra. You appreciated yourself with my money. The employees weren't even pretending to work on their laptops anymore. This was better than anything streaming on Netflix. This meeting is over, I announced, standing. Petra, you're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Oh, wait, we don't actually have security because we're a 20-person marketing agency, not Fort Knox. So just leave. Take your forged documents and your stolen bracelet and go. That's when Petra made her fatal mistake. She didn't leave. Instead, she drew herself up to her full height, about 5'6" in those Louboutins she couldn't actually afford, and screamed, "You need to leave! I'm a partner now! This is my company too! Get out before I have you removed!" The audacity. The sheer, unhinged audacity of this woman who'd been alphabetizing files 18 months ago, telling me to leave the company I built from nothing. I smiled again, wider this time. "Okay," I said softly. "I'll go. But here's what's going to happen over the next 24 hours. Let me tell you about the precise moment Petra Vaughn realized she'd walked into a trap she built herself. I didn't leave. Obviously. You don't abandon a company you built because someone with the business acumen of a houseplant tells you to. Instead, I sat back down, crossed my legs, and watched her spiral. "Well?" Petra demanded, her voice hitting that pitch dogs probably found uncomfortable. "Are you leaving or not?" "Not," I said pleasantly. "But please continue making threats you can't enforce. It's like watching someone try to pay for groceries with Monopoly money. Adorable, but ultimately pointless." Graham put his hand on her arm, which she shook off aggressively. "Trouble in paradise already. You love to see it." "Astrid, let's talk privately," Graham tried, using that reasonable tone he'd perfected during our marriage. The same tone he used when explaining why he needed to work late. Again, with Petra. For the 7th time that month. "No thanks," I replied. "I prefer witnesses. Keeps things honest. Well, honest adjacent considering present company." Our head designer, Marnie, bless her, was actively trying not to laugh. She'd never liked Petra. Mainly because Petra once told her that her portfolio looked very 2015 and suggested she try following some real designers on Instagram. Marnie had a graduate degree from Parsons. Petra had a certificate from a weekend seminar. "Fine," Petra snapped, turning to address the room like she was hosting a TED Talk nobody asked for. "Since Astrid's being difficult, let me clarify the new structure. I'll be overseeing creative direction. Based on what qualification?" Marnie interrupted, finally done pretending to be professional. "Your Pinterest boards?" "Based on my vision for modern branding," Petra shot back. "Something this company desperately needs. No offense, Astrid, but your approach is dated. Clients want fresh, innovative. They want results," I cut in, "which I've delivered consistently for 8 years. Meanwhile, your greatest contribution was that brewery pitch you stole from a Behance portfolio. The client actually sent me the original link. Super awkward." The color drained from her face again. She was going through more complexions than a chameleon at a paint store. "That was inspiration, not theft," she protested weakly. "Inspiration is taking elements and transforming them. You literally downloaded someone else's work and changed the fonts. That's not inspiration, honey. That's plagiarism with extra steps." Graham cleared his throat, desperate to regain control of a situation that was actively imploding. "Regardless of past misunderstandings, we need to focus on the future. Petra brings valuable skills. Name 3, I challenged. Silence. Beautiful, devastating silence. "She's great at social media," Graham finally offered. "So is every 19-year-old with a phone and too much time," I countered. "What else?" More silence. This was better than therapy. Cheaper, too. "The point is," Petra interjected, clearly panicking, Changes are happening whether you like it or not. I have legal partnership papers. Forged with my signature, I reminded her, which is federal fraud. But sure, wave that folder around like it's legitimate. Really sells the whole I have no idea what I'm doing vibe you've got going? Her hands were shaking now, barely visible. But I noticed. Graham noticed too, judging by how he stepped closer to her, protective instinct kicking in for the woman who'd helped him betray me. You can't prove anything, Petra said, but it sounded more like a question than a statement. Actually, I can prove everything. Forensic accountants are remarkably thorough. Every dinner, every trip, every cent you two stole thinking I was too busy running the actual company to notice. I pulled out another document. Here's a fun one. Remember that team-building weekend in Fredericksburg? The one I supposedly approved for staff morale? Graham went rigid. Yeah, that was just you two at a bed and breakfast. You expensed couples yoga. The invoice literally says couples yoga. You didn't even try to hide it. One of our junior copywriters, Hudson, made a choking sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. The whole room was living for this drama. I'd probably get honest employee engagement survey results for the first time ever. This is harassment, Petra tried, grasping at straws that didn't exist. You're creating a hostile work environment. I'm creating a hostile work environment, I repeated slowly. You screamed at me to leave my own company 20 minutes ago, in front of 15 witnesses. But sure, I'm the problem here. Graham, do something, Petra hissed at him, all pretense of professional composure gone. This was the real Petra, the one who thought sleeping with the boss meant she could skip the actual work part of having a career. Graham looked between us, clearly calculating which woman was more likely to destroy his life. Smart money was on me, considering I actually owned the company and had lawyers on speed dial. Maybe we should all take a breath, he suggested weakly. Maybe you should explain how you forged my signature, I countered. Since we're all here playing show and tell. I didn't forge anything, he lied badly. Graham was many things. Mediocre husband, worse business partner, but convincing liar wasn't on the list. His left eye twitched when he lied. Always had. I'd noticed it first when he told me his bachelor party in Vegas was just the guys playing poker. Turned out strip clubs have poker tables. Who knew? Your eye's twitching, I pointed out helpfully. He covered his eye like that would help. Petra was pacing now, those Louboutins clicking against the hardwood floor I'd personally selected and paid for. This is ridiculous. Graham, we have the papers. We have our lawyer. You have nothing, I said flatly. What you have is a folder full of fraudulent documents, a trail of embezzlement evidence, and approximately 4 hours before my actual lawyers, the ones from that firm downtown that handles federal cases, file papers that will make your life extremely complicated. You're bluffing, she repeated, but her voice cracked. Am I? Tell you what. Stick around. Wait for the process server. Should be here around 3 this afternoon. I scheduled them during lunch because I'm considerate like that. Graham finally found his voice. Astrid, please. We can work this out. We can watch you both face consequences for once in your entitled lives, I finished. That's what we can do. Petra grabbed her designer bag, another company expense I'd found buried in the books, and headed for the door. This isn't over. Oh, sweetie, I called after her. It's barely begun. She slammed the door. Graham followed her out, shooting me a look that might have been pleading or might have been indigestion. Hard to tell with him. The conference room erupted the second they left. Questions, exclamations, Marnie literally applauding. But I held up my hand. Meeting adjourned. Everyone take the rest of the day off. Paid. Consider it compensation for the entertainment. They filed out, buzzing with gossip that would dominate every group chat in Austin's marketing scene by sundown. I sat alone in my conference room, in my company, and waited for the real show to begin. The thing about carefully planned revenge is that it requires patience. And coffee. Lots of coffee. I stayed in that conference room for exactly 12 minutes after everyone left, staring at the evidence folders spread across my table like a very satisfying game of corporate solitaire. Then my phone buzzed. Text from my lawyer, Simone Barrett. Yes, that Barrett, the one whose face was on billboards across downtown Austin with the tagline, "We don't settle." Process server confirmed for 3 p.m. Papers ready. This is going to be spectacular. I smiled at my phone like it had just told me I won the lottery. Which, in a way, I had. The divorce and fraud lottery. Not as catchy, but significantly more satisfying. Here's what Petra and Graham didn't know. I'd suspected something was wrong for 6 months. Not because I'm psychic, but because Graham suddenly started caring about his appearance. New cologne. Gym membership he actually used. That thing where cheating husbands suddenly remember they have abs and decide everyone needs to see them. The real tip-off? He bought skinny jeans. Graham. The man who'd worn the same khakis for 5 years bought skinny jeans. That's not character development. That's an affair. So I'd done what any self-respecting CEO would do. I hired a forensic accountant. Not the fun kind from TV shows with quirky personalities and perfect hair. The boring kind who gets excited about spreadsheet irregularities and knows exactly how to trace money through shell accounts. Meet Vernon Walsh, 63 years old, bow ties, smells like old books and justice. He'd found everything, every forged signature, every fraudulent expense, every hotel room charged to corporate accounts. Vernon was thorough like a bloodhound crossed with a tax auditor. Mrs. Tate, he'd said in our meeting last Tuesday, peering over his reading glasses. I've been doing this for 37 years. This is the sloppiest embezzlement I've ever seen. They didn't even try to hide it. That bad? They expensed romantic getaways as client development. They used the company card at Victoria's Secret and marked it office supplies. Unless you're running a very different kind of agency, that's not office supplies. I'd laughed so hard I cried. Then I cried because my marriage was over. Then I laughed again because at least I'd get good stories out of it. Now, sitting in my conference room, I pulled up my bank app. Time for Phase 2. See, here's what Petra definitely didn't know. I was the only person with access to the company accounts. Graham had a corporate card, sure. But actual account access? Treasury management? That was all me. I'd learned that lesson from my father, who'd owned a construction business until his partner cleaned out the accounts and fled to Costa Rica. Dad always said, trust people, but control the money. 3 clicks later, I'd frozen every corporate card. Graham's, Petra's, even the general company card, just for fun. Another 2 clicks disabled their building access codes. One more call to our IT contractor, and both their company emails were locked. My phone rang. Simone, are you feeling vindictive today? She asked without preamble. Is that a rhetorical question? Good, because I've been looking into Petra's background. Want to hear something hilarious? Always. She doesn't have a college degree. Her resume says she graduated from UT with a marketing degree in 2018. I called the registrar. She attended for 1 semester, failed 3 classes, never went back. Complete fabrication. I leaned back in my chair, processing this gift from the universe. So she committed resume fraud to get the internship, which technically means her employment contract was void from the start, which means every payment she received was based on false pretenses, which means we can sue her for that too, I finished, grinning. I like the way you think. Also, her lawyer who supposedly verified the partnership papers? I looked him up. He's a real estate attorney who does mostly property closings. He doesn't do corporate law. Couldn't verify partnership papers if he tried. She literally hired the wrong kind of lawyer. She hired the cheapest lawyer she could find on Google, probably. This just keeps getting better. After we hung up, I sat there appreciating the beautiful chaos my soon-to-be ex-husband and his mistress had created. They'd built their affair on lies, fraud, and staggering incompetence. It was almost impressive. My phone buzzed again. Graham this time. We need to talk. I texted back. Your lawyer can talk to my lawyer. Oh wait, you can't afford a lawyer now. Awkward. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally. What did you do? Nothing illegal. Unlike some people I could mention. Astrid, please. Be reasonable. I was reasonable for 12 years. Reasonable got me a cheating husband and embezzlement. I'm trying unreasonable now. It's more fun. I blocked his number. Felt good. Felt really good. At 2:30, I drove to my actual home, the 4-bedroom Craftsman in Terrytown that was in my name, because I'd bought it before we got married. Graham had moved in when we married, but legally, it was mine. I'd verified that with Simone approximately 90 times. I changed the locks. All of them. Front door, back door, garage, even the gate code. The locksmith, a cheerful guy named Abel who'd clearly dealt with this situation before, worked quickly. Divorce? He asked, not unkindly. Is it that obvious? Ma'am, I've changed locks for 17 divorce situations this year. You're handling it better than most. One woman wanted me to install a moat. Did you? I'm a locksmith, not a medieval engineer. But I appreciated her vision. I laughed despite everything. Can you recommend the moat guy, just in case? By 3:15, I was back at the office. The process server, a woman named Delphine with the energy of someone who genuinely enjoyed her job, handed me copies of everything she'd delivered. The blonde one cried, Delphine reported. The husband looked like he might throw up. Standard reactions. You want details or just the highlights? Highlights, please. I need to save some joy for later. She said, and I quote, "This can't be legal." I told her that's what lawyers determine, not administrative assistants at nail salons, which is where I found her. She was getting acrylics, on a corporate card that declined. Beautiful, I breathed. The husband was at a coffee shop. His card declined there too. He tried to call someone, probably you, but kept getting blocked. Then he tried to pay with Apple Pay, but that was linked to the corporate card, so that declined too. He left without the coffee. Stop, I can only handle so much happiness at once. Delphine grinned. This job has its moments. Good luck with everything. You're going to destroy them. That's the plan. I spent the rest of the afternoon in my office, updating our client contact lists, ensuring nothing Graham or Petra touched could contaminate the business going forward. Every password changed. Every file backed up to my personal secure server. Every client personally called and assured that despite internal changes, their projects were in excellent hands. By 6 p.m., my phone had 43 missed calls from blocked numbers and 27 text messages from people I didn't recognize. I ignored them all. At 7, I ordered Thai food from that place on South Lamar. Pad Thai, spring rolls, mango sticky rice, celebration dinner for one. At 8:30, I poured a glass of wine, the expensive stuff Graham always said was too good for weeknights, and toasted myself in my newly secured home. And at 2:47 a.m., my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? Sobbing. Desperate, gulping sobs that would have been pitiful if they weren't coming from someone who'd screamed at me in my own conference room 9 hours earlier. Astrid. Petra's voice destroyed. Please. Please, I'm begging you. Make it stop. I took a sip of water, fully awake now, and settled into my couch. Make what stop, Petra? Everything. The cards, the accounts, the lawsuit. Please. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know it was illegal. Graham said everything was fine. That you'd agreed, that I'd agreed to forge my own signature? I interrupted. That's a new one. Please. More sobbing. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll give back everything. I'll resign. You're already fired, remember? You can't resign from unemployment. The lawsuit then. The criminal charges. Astrid, please. I can't go to prison. I can't. Should have thought about that before committing federal fraud, I said, my voice cold enough to freeze the Colorado River. Should have thought about it before screaming at me to leave my own company. Should have thought about it before sleeping with my husband and stealing $380,000. I'll pay it back. With what money? Your corporate card declined at the nail salon today. Really committed to that fraud aesthetic until the very end, weren't you? Silence. Then, how did you know about the nail salon? I know everything, Petra. That's what happens when you build a company from nothing. You pay attention. You track details. You don't steal from people who are smarter than you. Please, she whispered. I'll do anything. There's nothing you can do. The papers are filed. The evidence is documented. Your fake degree, your embezzlement, your fraud, all of it. You made your choices. Now you get to live with consequences. Novel concept, I know. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I turned it off. Then I finished my water, went back to bed, and slept better than I had in months. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of sunshine that feels personally offensive when you're experiencing consequences. I wouldn't know. I was on the consequence-free side of this equation, making French press coffee in my peaceful, Graham-free home. My phone came back to life at 7 a.m. 93 notifications. A new record. 17 voicemails from Graham. I listened to exactly one. Astrid, please, we need to figure this out. My mom's asking questions. I can't stay here. The air mattress has a leak. Call me back. He was at his mother's house. On a leaking air mattress. At 40 years old. The poetry was too perfect. I deleted the rest without listening. Simone called at 8:30, sounding positively gleeful. You're going to love this. Graham tried to withdraw money from the joint account last night. We don't have a joint account. Exactly. He went to 3 different ATMs trying to access money that doesn't exist. The bank flagged it as suspicious activity and locked his personal account pending verification. So he has no access to any money? Not a cent. His personal account's frozen, corporate cards are dead, and apparently he never bothered opening a separate savings account because he assumed he'd always have access to company funds. I sipped my coffee, savoring both the dark roast and the darker justice. What about Petra? Better. She tried to return the Audi to the dealership last night. Told them she needed to get out of the lease because of financial changes. They informed her it's not a lease, it's a purchase, financed entirely through your company. She doesn't own it. The company does. She's been driving stolen property. Can we repo it? Already done. Tow truck picked it up from her apartment complex at 6 this morning. Neighbors watched. I have photos if you want them. Send immediately. The photos arrived 30 seconds later. Petra in pajamas, arguing with a tow truck driver while her neighbors filmed on their phones. Her hair was in a messy bun. No makeup. This was the real Petra, not the filtered Instagram version she'd presented to the world. It gets better, Simone continued. Her apartment? Also paid for by the company. She signed the lease. But Graham set up automatic payments from the corporate account for $2,200 a month. That's fraud too. How is she this bad at crime? Entitlement makes people sloppy. They thought you'd never check. Classic mistake. What's our next move? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., emergency hearing at the courthouse. Judge Ramsey, she hates fraud cases. We present everything. The forged signatures, the embezzlement, the fake degree, the whole spectacular mess. We'll get a temporary restraining order preventing them from contacting you or any clients, plus preliminary injunctions freezing any assets they might try to hide. They don't have assets to hide. I know, but the paperwork is therapeutic. By noon, my phone was vibrating constantly. Text messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Finally, I looked at one. This is Graham's mother, Dorothy. We need to talk about what you're doing to my son. I responded, your son committed fraud and adultery. I'm doing paperwork. There's a difference. He made mistakes. Marriage is about forgiveness. Marriage is also about not forging your wife's signature and stealing nearly $400,000. But what do I know? I only built the company he robbed. You're being vindictive. I'm being thorough. Tell Graham to get a lawyer, preferably one who passed the bar. I blocked her number too. The block list was getting impressively long. At 2 p.m., my head designer Marnie called. You need to see this. See what? Petra's Instagram. She's having a full public breakdown. I opened Instagram, an app I rarely used because I had actual work to do, and found Petra's account. Her latest story, posted 20 minutes ago, was a tear-stained selfie with the caption, "When people you trusted destroy your life for no reason. Stay strong, everyone. Truth always wins." The comments were ruthless. Didn't you steal from your boss? Girl, the truth is you committed fraud. This is what happens when you sleep with married men and steal money. It's called consequences. My cousin works in Austin marketing and she said you literally screamed at the CEO to leave her own company. Bold strategy. I screenshotted everything and sent it to Simone with the message, Exhibit Z for the defamation countersuit? She replied, beautiful. Keep them coming. Monday morning, I arrived at the Travis County Courthouse at 8:45 wearing my navy suit, the power one I saved for major client presentations and apparently legal destruction of fraudulent business partners. Graham and Petra were already there, looking like they'd slept in a dumpster behind Whole Foods. Graham's khakis were wrinkled. Petra's hair had lost its salon shine. Their lawyer, if you could call him that, was the real estate guy Simone had found. He looked confused and slightly afraid. Judge Ramsey, a woman in her 60s with the energy of someone who'd seen every scam in existence and had zero patience for new ones, reviewed our evidence folders for exactly 7 minutes. Then she looked at Graham and Petra over her reading glasses with an expression that could freeze lava. "Mr. Tate, you forged your wife's signature to grant unauthorized equity to your—" She glanced at the papers. "Extramarital partner?" "It was a misunderstanding," Graham tried. "A misunderstanding that somehow resulted in $380,000 of fraudulent expenses?" Judge Ramsey's eyebrow raised. "That's a very expensive misunderstanding." "Your Honor, my client believed," the real estate lawyer attempted. "Your client believed he could commit fraud without consequences." Motion granted. Mrs. Flynn retains full ownership of Flynn Creative. All fraudulent partnership agreements are void. Mr. Tate and Ms. Vaughn are prohibited from contacting Mrs. Flynn, her employees, or any company clients. Assets are frozen pending criminal investigation. She banged her gavel. The most satisfying sound I'd ever heard. "Furthermore," Judge Ramsey continued, "I'm referring this case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. Fraud of this magnitude deserves more than civil penalties." Petra made a sound like a wounded animal. Graham went pale. "Your Honor, please," Petra started. "Ms. Vaughn, you committed fraud to obtain employment, forged legal documents, and embezzled hundreds of thousands of dollars. You should be grateful you're not being arrested in this courtroom. Don't test my patience." We filed out. In the hallway, Graham tried to approach me. Simone stepped between us like a very expensive, very effective guard dog. "No contact means no contact," she said. "Walk away, or I'll have you arrested for violating a court order that's 3 minutes old." He walked away. Petra followed, crying into her phone. Back at Flynn Creative, which I'd officially renamed Flynn Independent Agency over the weekend, my employees had decorated the conference room with balloons and a banner reading, "Long live the Queen." "Too much?" Marnie asked. "Perfect," I said, laughing for the first time in what felt like years. We spent the afternoon calling clients, reassuring them that the company was stable, thriving, and under single ownership. Most of them had heard rumors. Austin's marketing community was small, and most of them were relieved. "Honestly," one client said, "we only stayed because of you. Graham was useless and that Petra woman kept pitching us ideas from Pinterest." By week's end, we'd signed 2 new clients specifically because they'd heard about the drama and wanted to work with the woman who took down her cheating husband and his mistress in less than 72 hours. My reputation shifted from good CEO to CEO you don't mess with. Somehow, business improved. Graham moved from his mother's air mattress to a studio apartment near Riverside, the cheap part of town, nowhere near our old neighborhood. He got a job as a sales associate at a tech startup, entry level, starting over at 40. Petra? She left Austin entirely. Last I heard, she was working retail in Dallas and had made her Instagram private. The truth had indeed won, just not the way she'd imagined. The criminal investigation took months. Both eventually pleaded guilty to reduced charges, Graham to embezzlement, Petra to fraud and embezzlement. They got probation, community service, and orders to make restitution. They'd be paying me back for years. I calculated the payment schedule during a particularly boring conference call and smiled the entire time. 6 months after the conference room catastrophe, I sat in my newly renovated office, formerly our office, now decidedly mine, reviewing quarterly numbers that would have made past Astrid weep with joy. Flynn Independent Agency had grown 55%. We'd landed 8 new clients, including 2 Fortune 500 companies that specifically requested to work with the CEO who doesn't tolerate nonsense. Turns out, public fraud exposure is excellent marketing when you're the victim. not the perpetrator. I'd hired 3 new employees, all women, all talented, all with verified degrees and backgrounds I'd personally checked. Vernon, my forensic accountant, had become a permanent consultant. His bow tie collection had expanded, and he'd caught 2 minor expense discrepancies before they became major problems. Best investment I'd ever made. The divorce finalized in March. Graham got nothing except his original 25% equity, which I'd immediately bought out at fair market value, significantly lower than he'd hoped because, shockingly, committing fraud decreases your negotiating power. He signed without argument, probably grateful I wasn't pursuing additional damages. I saw him once after everything settled, at a coffee shop near the Capitol. He was with a woman who wasn't Petra, younger, clearly impressed by whatever story he was telling. I watched him use the same gestures, the same smile he'd used on me 12 years ago. Some people never learn. They just find new audiences. He saw me, froze mid-sentence, then pretended he hadn't. I raised my coffee cup in a mock toast and left. The look on his face was worth every legal fee. Petra's restitution payments arrived monthly like clockwork, $217, automatically deducted from her paycheck in Dallas. It would take her approximately 11 years to pay back her share. I'd calculated it down to the month. Every payment was a small, satisfying reminder that actions have consequences and math is undefeated. Someone asked me once, at a networking event, if I regretted how everything went down. If I wished I'd handled it quietly, privately, without the public spectacle. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Not even a little bit, I said. They humiliated me publicly. They stole from my company publicly. They got consequences publicly. That's not revenge. That's symmetry. The truth is, I'd spent 12 years being reasonable, being understanding, being the supportive wife while Graham bounced between ideas and jobs and identities, never quite finding his footing. I'd built a company while he found himself. I'd been patient while he figured out what he wanted to be when he grew up. And my reward for all that patience? Forged signatures and a mistress who thought Pinterest was a business strategy. So no, I didn't regret the public nature of their downfall. I didn't regret the frozen bank accounts, or the repossessed Audi, or the courthouse hearing that made local legal blogs. They'd made their choices. I'd simply documented them with extreme prejudice and excellent lawyers. My father called me a month after everything settled. He rarely called. We had that kind of relationship where silence meant approval and phone calls meant concern. "You did good," he said without preamble. "Better than I did with my partner situation. You didn't have forensic accountants in the 80s. No, but I had pride. Kept it quiet. Let him run off to Costa Rica with my money while I rebuilt alone. You're smarter than that. I learned from the best disaster," I said, smiling. "That's my girl." We hung up after 90 seconds. Longest conversation we'd had in years. I counted it as a win. The company rebranding turned out to be the best decision I'd made besides the legal annihilation of my ex-husband and his accomplice. Flynn Independent Agency had a ring to it. Strong, clear, unburdened by partners who contributed nothing but chaos and embezzlement. I updated my LinkedIn profile. Changed my relationship status to single. Posted a photo of the new office with the caption, "Sometimes the best business decision is eliminating dead weight." It got 3,000 likes. Several women messaged me their own stories of partners who'd stolen, cheated, or tried to take credit for work they didn't do. Apparently, I'd accidentally become an icon for entrepreneurial revenge. There were worse legacies. On the 1-year anniversary of that Saturday conference room meeting, Marnie brought cupcakes decorated with tiny gavels. The team sang an off-key version of "I Will Survive," while I pretended to be embarrassed, but was actually deeply moved. "Speech," Hudson demanded, holding up his phone to record. I stood, cupcake in hand, surrounded by people I'd hired, in a company I'd built, in an office that finally felt entirely mine. A year ago, someone told me to leave my own company. Today, we're celebrating 55% growth, industry recognition, and the most competent team in Austin. The lesson here isn't about revenge, though that was satisfying. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone convince you otherwise. Not your husband, not his mistress, not anyone. They applauded. Someone wiped away tears. Marnie whistled. I took a bite of my cupcake and thought about Petra's Instagram post from months ago. Truth always wins. She'd been right. Just not the truth she'd expected. Turns out the truth was this. I'd built something real while they'd built a house of cards and stolen credit. When the wind came, and it always comes, only one of us was left standing, and I looked spectacular doing it.